I'd like to introduce the Brave team. We have Kyle Taylor-Ganson, Maya Rabot, Adia Thomas, Courtney Tuttle, David Carpenter, and Megan Karkin.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maya, and we are Brave, Broadening Relationship and Violence Education. Lauren Astley from Wayland, Massachusetts, was 18 years old when her life was taken by her ex-boyfriend shortly after their breakup in 2011. Lauren's story has had a profound impact on us, and therefore we are dedicating this project to her. So when something like this happens, we can't help but ask questions. How could this happen? Could this have been prevented? And what are we doing in Massachusetts from preventing it from happening again? In order to investigate these questions, we had to learn the language. It turns out this type of assault is called teen dating violence, otherwise known as TDV. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention define TDV as the pattern of actual or threatened acts of physical, sexual, verbal, and emotional abuse perpetrated by an adolescent between the ages of 13 and 18 against a current or former dating partner. Now, Adia will tell you about the prevalence of TDV and the associated human rights violations.
Thank you, Maya. First, we needed to research the basics of TDV. 1.5 million high school students experienced physical abuse from a dating partner in a single year. 22.4% of women and 15% of men first experienced some type of dating violence between the ages of 11 and 17 years old. Girls are 2 times more likely to experience TDV than boys. And every year, 1 in 10 Massachusetts teen has had their human rights violated by TDV. And 57% of Massachusetts schools do not implement any type of TDV prevention. We have identified TDV as a direct violation of 5 human rights. In the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the first article states, Article 3, the right to life, liberty, and personal security. Article 5, freedom from torture and degrading treatment. Article 12, freedom from interference with privacy, family, home, and correspondence. Article 16, the right to marriage and family. Article 26, the right to education. In order to better understand the causes and prevention strategies related to TDV, we reviewed current literature and found that there are many adverse short-term and long-term health effects related to TDV. Physically, this includes injury, unwanted pregnancy, the acquisition of a sexually transmitted infection, or death. Emotionally, survivors of TDV have been found to have higher rates of depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and are more likely to contemplate or commit suicide. Behaviorally, TDV survivors exhibit lower academic performance, poor decision-making related to drugs and alcohol, and school refusal. Now, Courtney will discuss theory and best practices.
Thank you, Adia. So TDV as a form of intimate partner violence, or IPV, can be explained by the IPV theoretical framework of radical feminist sociocultural theory. This theory implies that gender norms and social expectations of a patriarchal hierarchy create a power imbalance between genders. A patriarchal structure provides more power to men over women, which makes women more susceptible to IPV. Gender-blind theories of IPV propose there is a mutual and equivalent violence between men and women. However, gender-blind theories generally fail to recognize that although women may use violence against men, the context, meaning, and consequence of this violence differs. Theoretical frameworks impact the design of prevention and intervention services. For example, using the radical feminist sociocultural theory would mean that prevention services would target females as the victims and males as the perpetrators of TDV. In a gender-blind analysis, both males and females are viewed equally as perpetrators and victims. It's clear so far what we've been talking about that prevention is necessary for TDV. We chose to focus on 3 curriculums that have been evaluated and proven effective. These curriculums were designed to directly prevent and intervene in TDV. These curriculums are, number 1, Expect Respect, which focuses on healing trauma, healthy relationship training, and empowering youth to end violence. The second curriculum is called the 4th R, which focuses on solving interpersonal conflicts, addressing bullying, drug experimentation, and risky sexual behavior. And finally, Safe Dates. This curriculum focuses on conflict resolution skills, increasing community resources related to TDV, and changing adolescent norms about gender roles. Now Dave will walk you through our methodology and partnership with stakeholders.
Thank you, Courtney. So having reviewed the literature, we started to develop a pretty comprehensive idea of some of the causes behind teen dating violence, how it's affecting people, and probably the best news was that there are things that you can do about it. We then returned our attention back to the initial question, which is, what are we doing about it in Massachusetts? And it's obviously a problem. Human rights are being violated, so why aren't we doing more? This is a really big question, and we weren't really sure who to talk to. And being social workers, we kind of wanted to talk to everybody. So we identified stakeholders at both the micro, meso, and macro level and tried to find people that were familiar with the issue and were attempting to do something about it. We began by meeting with teens at a community center and 2 schools. From them, we wanted to know if they felt as though teen dating violence was an issue that affected their life, whether or not they were receiving any education on the subject, and if it happened to them or somebody that they knew, did they feel adequately prepared to do anything about it? We also met with officials at 2 government agencies, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and the Department of Public Health. From them, we wanted to know what resources are being made available in public schools. Did they feel as though these resources were sufficient? And if not, what were the barriers getting in the way of better resources being made available? We wanted to learn about the law, so we marched up to Beacon Hill and met with some legislators. From them, we wanted to learn what the existing law is, as well as efforts to improve it and what's getting in the way of that legislation passing. And then we also met with a variety of agencies and organizations that are implementing various forms of teen dating violence prevention across Massachusetts. We wanted to know what their theory of change was, how their programs work, and who's accessing it. And more importantly, we wanted to understand from them what they thought was preventing a larger audience and a larger population from receiving their services. And throughout these conversations, we were able to develop a better understanding of not only what's happening in Massachusetts, but why we're not doing more. And we identified 3 primary issues. The first is low awareness. The stakeholders that we spoke with consistently mentioned that their perception was that the general public just doesn't realize how prevalent teen dating violence is and how severe the consequences can be. Similarly, where they're not aware of the issue, they're also not aware that there are effective ways to prevent teen dating violence. As a result, there isn't much political will to affect change. The second issue is budgetary constraints. This is kind of a common issue with every program that money is just hard to come by. I think we've all run into, over the last few years, times being tough, budgets being tight, and both the government and school districts just don't feel that they have money for new programs. And then the last issue was the weak law. Currently in Massachusetts, implementing teen dating violence prevention is optional, and 57% of schools are opting to do nothing. So we took all these different ideas, brought them together, and with the collaboration of stakeholders, recognized that whatever our actions were going to be, they needed to help raise awareness, be inexpensive and easy to access, and help to advocate for improved law. And to tell you how we did that and what we came up with, I'm going to give it to Megan.
Thank you, Dave. So this is what we did to reduce TDV in Massachusetts. We first developed the brand BRAVE, Broadening Relationship and Violence Education. And we chose this word specifically to, really stress that you need this state of mind and the emotional condition that you need when taking action against TDV and advocating for human rights. We created logos, stickers, T-shirts, pamphlets, and flyers, and that further emphasized the BRAVE brand. And we passed those out at table events and to 4 Boston area public high schools. So we advocated for policy by speaking with legislators about House Bill 388. and that's an act that would introduce healthy relationship training with a focus on violence prevention to all high schools across Massachusetts. So we drafted a letter to be sent to the Joint Committee on Education, where that bill is currently located. And then we tabled at Wheelock College, Wellesley College, and the Bark Walk for Change to collect signatures for our letter. We also created a TDV student workshop curriculum. Then we implemented it at the Ivy Street School and the Life Skills Center in Riverside School. These workshops emphasize human rights and ways in which the workshop participants can help themselves or a friend if they're in a dangerous relationship. Finally, we created a website, bravema.org. This acts as a comprehensive central resource for anyone with an internet connection to use to be informed about human rights and TDV prevention and intervention. Our website, on it, we've created an interactive map which shows TDV prevention and intervention services across Massachusetts. And also another major part of our website development was the creation of 2 comprehensive comparison grids. And one of them is for TDV programs in Massachusetts, and the other grid is for TDV curriculums. These grids allow schools, communities, and government agencies the ability to compare and contrast different programs and curriculums, and then they can pick which one's the best fit depending on their specific population, their location, and the resources that they have available. Now Kyle will discuss the outcomes of these action steps.
Thank you, Megan. So here's what came out of these actions. As of April 27th, our website had 216 unique visitors and 457 page views. Our Facebook page had 75 likes and a maximum weekly reach of 564 people. Our 3 YouTube videos had over 6,000 views. Our Twitter had 50 followers and 140 tweets, and several of those tweets have been retweeted by national organizations. And while tabling and advocating, we distributed 207 pamphlets, 213 flyers, 500 stickers, and have collected over 300 signatures in support of House Bill 388. But did any of this work? Maya will answer that question.
Thanks, Kyle. So through surveys, we gathered qualitative and quantitative information about our website and our workshops. And we found that 100% of survey participants would recommend our website to a family, friend, or educator. 77% reported that our website increased their knowledge of TDV. 84% found the website was easy to navigate, read, and understand. And finally, out of all the web pages, 84% found the resource list to be the most helpful. And of all the feedback we received, the most meaningful came from Lauren Astley's father and the founder of the Lauren Dunn Astley Memorial Foundation, Malcolm Astley. So we're just going to show us a quick clip of him talking about the Brave website.
That we do. And none of the other stuff really matters if humans aren't good at having sound, healthy, effective relationships that honor both people in a pair. Well, what Brave has managed to do is to begin to establish an accessible, easily accessible clearinghouse for materials to address the very kinds of problematic and tragic, potentially tragic situations. And through that, awareness can grow, the courses can be identified and tried out and implemented, and that's the way you get norm change.
Okay, so also included in our action steps was to implement TDV and human rights workshops. And we found that 50% of workshop participants experienced or knew someone who experienced teen dating violence. 70% of workshop participants knew little or nothing about TDV and human rights prior to the workshop. And finally, 90% reported that the information about TDV and human rights would be useful in their life. And now Kyle will give concluding remarks.
Thank you, Maya. So what we learned from our Integrative Participatory Action Research Project is that TDV is a human rights violation that must be addressed in Massachusetts and across this country. TDV affects 1.5 million teenagers each year, and the fact remains that more needs to be done. Though we have already done a lot to raise awareness, advocate, and inform, we plan to continue to complete important action steps moving forward. This includes translating our website for cultural competency, creating a specific section for TDV perpetrators, adding forums to share information about what works and what doesn't, and finally, looking for an organization to take over the site. We will continue to advocate by meeting with the House Chair and the Joint Committee on Education, and we will be testifying at a public hearing for House Bill 388 on May 14th. We want to thank all our collaborators who helped us better understand TDV prevention and intervention in Massachusetts, and based on these collaborations, we found that there's something can be done to prevent TDV. But we still need your help. Here's what you can do. Please visit our poster and sign the letter in support of House Bill 388. It's right outside. You can go to bravema.org, where you can become better informed about TDV information, connections, and evidence-based best practices. And if you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, don't be afraid to take a stand. You need to be brave to end teen dating violence. We now want to open it up to questions.
Thank you. Good job, guys. I like how you said that you guys will be translating the website, because that was what I was going to ask. I just wanted to know if you guys found, when you were putting together like the resource list, did you find a lot of agencies that, you know, dealt with different cultures and teens, because that can affect how the work is done. Did you see anything about culture differences and when you were putting the list together?
Yeah, I was actually really impressed by how many services are available in Massachusetts that are culturally competent. Specifically Saheli for the Southeast Asian women's population, men and women. What were some of the others? Off the top, we'd have to hit the resource page. This is why it's on a website. But the point is that there were probably a half dozen different organizations that were particularly targeting a specific population. So a big part of what we're doing is trying to increase access and connect people, because somebody might know that a teen dating violence agency exists, but not one that's specifically speaking to them. So hopefully we'll help make that connection.
I think that was another important aspect of the grid that we talked about, which covers different curriculums and kind of prevention programs that are in place, which, you know, focuses on cultural competency and, you know, different languages. So depending on the target population, you know, if they speak different language, if, you know, more diverse populations, you choose a different curriculum.
You guys did a great job, by the way. I would ask, on the grid that you created, what would be a suggestion of a program that you would suggest to someone to implement in either a school or a community program?
I think it really depends on what the school has available to them. So of the curriculums we found, you know, some of them cost a lot of money, some of them are free, some of them only work with a certain age or just population of kids. So I think, yeah, I think it really depends on the curriculum, but I would say I think schools would find it really helpful to see like all the curriculums that are available, because some schools just don't have the resources. So then like a peer leadership program would be really helpful, as opposed to like a curriculum that they'd have to pay like $360 for.
I just wanted to add to that, I mean, if there were the time constraints and the financial constraints, I mean, you saw in our lit review, Courtney talked briefly about expect, respect, the fourth R, and safe dates. And so those are three practices that are widely used, and they are evidence-based. So I think the schools just need to talk about which one that they want and like make a decision, because I think they need to take into account the theory behind that, which Courtney had briefly touched on. because some curriculums are focusing on the male as perpetrator, female as victim, and then others focus on everyone, there's equivalent violence. So it's really depending on what the school wants to teach, because there is evidence for both of those curriculums to be effective.
Hi, great job, guys. So I had a question kind of regarding supports for survivors of teen dating violence. I know I've worked at a DV agency, and something that was kind of hard was in working with teens when you're dealing with, does this become a child protective issue? Confidentiality, working with parents. We kind of always went back and forth with kind of what do you do? So I don't know, you guys found a lot of stuff about kind of education, kind of the front line, but once, a teen is in these relationships, did you find any agencies or resources kind of specializing in support or counseling for teens who are involved in a teen dating violence relationship?
I don't remember a specific agency, but I do remember from the list of best practices that when working with teenagers that find themselves in an abusive relationship, that there were a few kind of primary things that were recommended. Safety planning with them, so even if they choose to stay in the relationship, that they have a sense of how to keep themselves safe. And connecting them with either, it might be a therapist, it might be a lawyer. If they decide to leave the relationship, it may be walking them through the process of getting a restraining order. But it wasn't, it was more, these are the things that you can do for somebody unless this is the organization that's going to do them for them. That was my understanding.
Hi, I guess my question has to do with how are you going to grow your advocates? I believe that as a teacher, I believe that instead of top down, the administration and the school department deciding what curriculum they're going to use, that you may want to think about growing advocates at the high school level who become advocates like you that continue the same kind of work that you're doing, which is this awareness piece. And then they can talk to the administration. My fear is that when you go to administration and they're going to come out with, curriculum 1 or curriculum 2, that students won't have any voice in buying into that curriculum. And I imagine that you understand that if you grow your advocates, I don't know the language per se, but if you grow your advocates, you will have people, young people, who believe as strongly as you do. I think the presentation was just wonderful.
Just in response to that, I think that was kind of like one, I was just thinking about this as well when I was talking to someone outside about the poster, and our 75 likes are great on our Facebook page. However, they're mostly friends and family and some Wheelock students. We'd love to get 150 likes from high school students in Boston public schools or metro schools. So I think that one of the big next steps really should be is getting into schools, speaking with kids, and making it an issue that they want to then advocate for and carry up. I think that is like one of the big next steps for us. I think getting into school is really difficult. And as you can see, there's not even programs in schools, so how are they going to let us come in the door? But I totally agree, and I think that it's really important that kids are following us on Twitter, are using our grids and our website, because it's free information that will help them in lots of different ways, and it's really important.
I completely agree. I think, the point of a participatory action research project is to go to the people that are being affected and ask them what they need. And I think that was a really big limitation in our project in terms of reaching the teens, because that's who was impacted by this topic. And there was a lot of pushback from schools about getting in touch with this vulnerable population and needing to get permission from parents. So I think a next step for us to think about would be to really see how we could get that input from the teenagers themselves.
I also agree. But a lot of the research did show that it would be most effective for middle school aged children to have some sort of intervention with like dating violence, like prevention. And that's just because when they're already at the high school level, it might be too late already. So, I mean, I think we all kind of addressed like we've been taking short steps, and I think we just need to slowly climb to get there. And it would be wonderful, I think, if eventually we could have those programs in all high schools and even middle schools.
Thank you very much. So we have our final presenters for this afternoon. They will